First, this week's 1-on-1 in 10 with Speaker of the House, Gerry Brownlee. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful.
You know how much I really do not like that term, comrade. Not at all respectful.
Gerry, I have asked you on tonight's show, in the wake of the Parliament haka and the anger many in the Māori community and Pākehā community felt about that ruling. I have watched your career since you entered Parliament in 1996. I have had the good fortune of speaking with you privately many times, and as a Parliament TV tragic and political geek, I think you are one of our best speakers and are as genuinely passionate about the Institute of Parliament as I am. You are also a fellow podcaster, and I wanted to help your ratings out. Comrade, I know you are not racist, and that your ruling of disorderly conduct is a most valued parliamentary principle that threads back to centuries when King Charles I kicked in the doors of the Commons. Why was it important to refer Hana-Rāwhiti and Debbie to the Privileges Committee for their haka? And why was it important to name Hana and ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to remove her if needed?
Well, let's be very clear. It wasn't about the haka as such. It's that when the decision was made by Hana to pick up the bill and rip it up, we were in the process of a parliamentary vote.
Right.
The Māori Party had just cast their vote. There were other votes to come, or at least a vote to be declared. And it is simply unacceptable that the process of Parliament is impeded in that way.
Yes.
Once that haka started, of course, there was the gallery all joined in. It was very organised, in my opinion. And then the three Māori Party members moved onto the floor of the House while it was in session and advanced upon particularly the ACT Party in what can only be described as an attempt to intimidate in some particular way. Bizarre, really, because the vote was clearly not going to be in favour of that bill progressing. But you can't have that. There's a lot of things that are tolerable in Parliament, but interfering with the process of a vote is not at all tolerable. Hana's actions in firstly casting the vote and then ripping up the bill and beginning the haka, I think that was totally appropriate that she should be asked to leave the House for a period of time. And ultimately, once I viewed the video a couple of times to have a look at, making sure I was in the right space, clearly she had to be referred to the Privileges Committee as well. As was your guest here tonight, Penny Henry. He took an entirely different view at the Privileges Committee and, had a different outcome. So I think, a lot of the result of that Privileges Committee decision had to do with the way in which the Privileges Committee itself was treated by those who should have been looking for some sort of redemption, but clearly didn't want to receive it.
What do you say to those who argue the haka is tikanga?
That the haka, I'm sorry, I'm actually having a little bit of trouble hearing you from you. I don't know how to turn my machine up. I'm sorry, but in some circumstances that would be a blessing, but not here. Did you just ask me what was...
What do you say
to
what do you say to people who argue the haka is tikanga?
Well, we often have a haka at the end of treaty settlement bills. I'm sure there's been other occasions where the haka has been performed. And when everybody knows what's going on and it's recognised as being part of a continuum in a process, that's not the problem. The problem in this case was it was not notified. There was a degree of hijack and it did interrupt the vote. The key point is it interrupted a vote, the most crucial part of the democratic process inside Parliament.
Doesn't the context matter, Gerry? Māori had just endured a terribly divisive full frontal attack on the treaty in the form of the Treaty Principles Referendum, which was a needlessly inflammatory virtue signal for ACT, and its defeat demanded a response from every Māori MP in the House, didn't it?
Well, why didn't they wait until the actual vote was recorded and the bill was lost? And then it would have been something that they might have decided they wanted to celebrate. Yeah. It would have been very, very easy had they told my office what was going on, for us as a parliament to accept that there might be that type of expression at the end of a vote, particularly given the nature of this particular piece of legislation.
Talking of tikanga, was the decision by the Privileges Committee to break their own tikanga with a manifestly unfair punishment that didn't have wide support within that committee?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the Privileges Committee. That's not appropriate. I get to refer people to it, but it is the architect of its own destiny, and it would be inappropriate for me to sort of cast any reflection upon the decisions that they make. I simply report those to the House.
Newsroom puts the Wellington hikoi against the Treaty Principles Referendum at 84,000 with one arrest for disorderly behaviour. The Parliament lawn protests had 5,000 and it led to a riot and 293 arrests. Who is more of a problem, the right or the left?
I don't think you should characterise it that way, because I think when that hikoi arrived at Parliament, there would have been people from quite a range of political perspectives within that group. I thought it was a remarkable day because there was, there was I suppose, a notification of what was intended. That large crowd arrived at Parliament. They said that they'd be leaving by a particular time, and when they left, the grounds were spotless. And I think that's the sort of country we should aspire to, a country where you can have big protests like that. You can make a point, and it certainly made a point, but you don't have to get into that, nasty side of things that I think we saw with the occupation.
That last question was facetious, but there is a deeper truth, and you as the Speaker of our most important institute is facing it. How do we maintain political discourse and ensure physical threats and toxic harassment isn't part of it?
Well, you don't tolerate it. And I think that was another aspect of the recent Privileges Committee decision, because, as I said before, there were three members who advanced upon another party in what could have been considered a threatening manner. Now, the Privileges Committee decided that's what the case was. And so the penalty eventually said, no, there's no acceptability for that. And I don't think we should ever get to a point where that becomes acceptable.
I'm reading Daniel Hannan's How We Invented Freedom and Why It Matters, and when you get past all his property rights worship, he makes incredibly strong arguments about the values that underpin the Anglo-Saxon Westminster tradition, with its focus on free speech, no taxation without representation, the sovereignty of Parliament, regular elections, the rule of law, and defence of the individual. These all values built into our Parliament. As the Speaker of the House, why is democracy important?
Oh, if you can't separate democracy from freedom. If you have any other system, then you're putting in the hands of one or two people the whole, I suppose, bounds of how you can live your life. And I don't think that's something any of us want. One of the things that I think is interesting in New Zealand, I often ask myself, what if there was some sort of a group that wanted to mount a coup, overthrow the government and take over the place? I suspect they'd make no progress whatsoever, because in the end, even those who may not like a particular style of government, whether it's left or right, will recognise that they want to have a say. They don't want to hand it over to some small group of people. And, if you look around the world, the freedoms that are being impinged in all sorts of places are quite worrying. And I think we should be grateful that we have a country where you can have divergence of political views, quite disparate a range of opinion about how the country should progress, but a recognition that a government is elected to govern, and the right of the opposition to oppose is also equally important.
Why shouldn't we expand the universal franchise to 16? 16 is the age of consent, and climate change will impact them far more than older voters. The UK is lowering the voting age to 16. Wouldn't New Zealand democracy benefit from doing it as well?
Well, the UK is not lowering it. They've got to go to a process at the next election to see if the UK public want to do that, as I understand it, and I'll be surprised if they do. I think young people these days have got so much on their plate. I get very worried when I see, people in that sort of age bracket angsting about things like climate change, all those school sort of strikes and everything else. there's almost creating a fear in them about the future, which I think is unreasonable. And the question then would be, well, who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for, presumably, much older people to be able to represent them in some particular way. I just think you're putting too much on young people. 18 is a reasonable age. Most people are out of school at that stage. They're in their first stages of work or tertiary study. And I think they have a little bit more worldly approach to things. I think 16 is simply too young.
Does a unicameral parliament like ours need an upper house? And what do you think of a 4-year term?
Well, two questions there. The first thing is I'm not a fan of the 4-year term. I think everything that's claimed for it is pretty trite in lots of ways. We don't have that upper house at the moment. So if you had an upper house, then everything would take so much longer. Mm-hmm. And I think for that reason, I don't support an upper house either. I do note that other countries' upper houses, so Britain, for example, and Canada, another one, members of those particular upper houses are appointed for a very, very long time, not voted on, appointed. And in Canada, in the case of Canada, they're there till they're 75. In Britain, that's pretty much a lifetime appointment. I don't think it serves a lot of extra scrutiny on the legislative process, but a 3-year term most certainly does.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, Sir Roger Douglas is on the political panel tonight. Do you have any advice about being on the show from the Speaker of the House to a Knight of the Realm?
No, of course not. I've got a great deal of respect for Sir Roger. I remember one thing that he wrote, and he may remember this in a book that he wrote a long time ago, where he said that if the entire New Zealand wool clip was manufactured into carpet, we wouldn't have enough production to be able to carpet the floors of California, or the demand for carpet and floors in California in any given year. And I think that sort of puts into perspective where New Zealand sits in the world and how we should approach trade and recognise the challenges that some see we have are not that great if we do the hard work, make sure that our regulatory environment in New Zealand is sound and get on with it, because it is that trade that provides the lifestyle that we have. So I would say to him, Sir Roger, if you've got anything new and innovative and exciting, make sure you get it out and don't get beaten down by the left who are surrounding you at the present time. Innovative thought is always a good thing.
Thank you, comrade. Invite me to your end-of-year drinks. Parliamentary security always freaked out when I turn up. Thank you.
You most certainly will receive that invitation, Mr. Bradbury. I think you add a great deal to the political discussion in this country.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you.
Don't use that word, comrade.
Okay.